I think one of the reasons I've shown this to actors over the years, or I've shown it to cinematographers, was again to break through, because to break through a kind of prison of the system, you know, in a way. You have so many wonderful young actors who, unfortunately, at times are used by the system. You know, they come out of an independent film, let's say, you know, and then they do wonderful performances. Then they're put in a big Hollywood film, which is about a cartoon character. The film doesn't do too well. The actor doesn't work again, and doesn't work again for maybe 2 or 3 years, or 2 or 3 films, maybe, which is like a year and a half. And I think it becomes like a monster. It's eating its young, you know. And I think one of the things is is not only that, but the actor also has to deal with, on a big screen, in the system and the industry the way it is. And I'm talking about Hollywood. I'm talking about, and even though I'm in New York, my films are still financed by Hollywood. So we have a situation that younger people, very talented, the promise of the actors over the years, like a Brando or a Dean or Montgomery Clift, people like that of today, sometimes get self-destruct because they're put in a system that has to pay attention every day to the publicity, to which parties they're going to which screening they're invited to. You could be invited to a screening which is the A list, and you could be on the B list. You find out later you may be on the C list, which means you've lost position in town. Now, this happens all the time. This happens all the time in any industry, particularly in Hollywood. But there's something that's happened with the society now, because of the materialism and the consumerism gone mad and rampant, that happens faster. And something like this, something like Rocha's work, to show to actors who have a core of wanting to do something more than becoming part of a system. It might shock them into having fortitude and strength and overcoming those problems. You could do it. Some have done it over the years. Some have done it. There have been great actors who started in the 60s are still working, you know. But I see now what's happening is that people are used up in 2 days and gone. And I see pictures like this. I say, remember, this is also cinema. This also can happen. This is also film. This is also movies. Because cinema sometimes has a bad connotation in terms of becoming, you know, something that is counterculture. And so our dream at the time in the late 60s, I hadn't made films when I met Glauber Rocha. I hadn't made films at that point when I first met him, when I first saw these films. And our dream at the time, in this, what happened with that whole group in California, when we went to California, was to make new pictures that, shall I answer that for you? No, wait. Our goal. We thought we were going to make a new cinema of some sort, and this is not just from. It was the decline. I mean, Rocha and many of the people at that time were talking about the decline of a Hollywood system and Hollywood cinema. That's true, but I guess we became a new group that came in, and we tried up until about 1980, 81. It lasted, and then that was over. That doesn't mean it can't exist. It doesn't mean it still can't work. I think it can work, and I think a lot of that is happening with American cinema since the late 80s, all through the 90s with independent cinema to a certain extent. But that can also fall into a kind of what's the word? You show pictures to people who already agree with you. You know what I'm saying? People who you get a social topic, and you show a very heartfelt film about some sort of social problem, and who's going to argue? So, it's well made. It is well made. They acted well, but you should go further and use cinema as a language. And now, when these pictures came out, they were talking about 16 millimeter, John Cassavetes shooting, Faces in 16 millimeter being shown on big screens in America and all over the world. The Maisel brothers, Penny Baker, all these films being shown on Saturday nights here, right around the corner here, in major theaters, like regular features from Hollywood, only made with a new approach to cinema. Um, and all over Europe this happening too, and in Japan. And at that time, it looked like there would be a new language of cinema in a way, and people were redefining it. Now that's upon us again, and it has to do with digital video, and has to do with the ability of anybody to pick up a camera. And once they want to tell a story with that camera, they got to look through the eyepiece. And when you do that, you have to frame it. You have to let the person who's going to see that, understand what you want to tell them, which means you're going to be a filmmaker. Now, if you have something to say, it's a very powerful medium that's happening right now. There's so many different ways. And now there's talk, and I guess it's happening, that, again, I'm not sure if this is would be considered cinema anymore, but films like great Hollywood films, or films like great European or Asian films, South American films, being shown on iPods. Well, I don't know if the film was made to be seen that big on a screen, that small, I should say, and that size. And so that becomes something else. And it's being redefined and reinvented as we speak. And it's a very powerful medium, I mean, the computer, the internet, and that sort of thing. This is something that when these films were made, nobody had thought of. So it's open again. And I think what has to happen is that we have to keep shocking and, in a way, shaking up the young talent and saying, don't get caught up with, not only in the main system, but also with the heartfelt independent film. Well, the violence in Antonio dos Mortos is stylized. But the problem is that it's not. It reminds me of a ritualistic violence. It reminds me of rituals that are played out where people don't get hurt, but one plays out the violence. So there's a distancing, in a way. Now, yet, I know that I read about Rocha over the years. I know about Bertolt Brecht and all. I never understood that. I mean, I don't know. I come, as I say, it took me years to come around to where other people were when these films were made. And I was never an intellectual that way, and still am not. But the point is that the distancing didn't matter. I still felt the power. I knew what those images meant, and I knew what that violence meant, even though the violence was not necessarily shown realistically. You see, and that I don't say it's good or bad. I'm just saying that it didn't matter to me. And certainly, coming off of Bonnie and Clyde Made in America, or The Wild Bunch, or Sam Peckinpah, as I say, this if anything, is tied directly to the violence that was expressed in a certain manner in the Leone films. More Italian, more European, but also Japanese. I also felt a very strong association with Japanese cinema too when I saw Rocha's pictures, sort of like Japanese and Italian cinema mixed together, I used to say, and I was trying to struggle to find out what it was, to find out where all these styles came from. But then I realized too, I think about Taram Trans, and I look at it now, and it's, you see Welles, you see Orson Welles, you see Eisenstein, of course, and whenever I make a picture, the first thing I do to jumpstart, if anything's left, I run Russian films of the 1920s. And it's Eisenstein, Doshenko, Dziga Vertov, some Podovkin, some Kuleshov. But now these days Doshenko I like a lot. And if I can, Antonio dos Mortos or Taram Trans, and that's just to push the mind working. That's to refresh the memory, or should I say, if there is anything left, to refresh the inspiration, to be inspired, just to be around great cinema, to see it and to be part of it, just to be in the room. You don't even have to look at it. You could be there in the room while it's being projected, And so, for me, I think my eye caught, particularly Taram Trans, and my eye went directly towards it because I think my eye was attuned to Wellesian cinema, Orson Welles. I liked Welles's films a lot.
Um homem não pode se dividir assim. A política e a poesia são demais para só homem.
And so I came from a very conservative background, and in the early 60s is when I started to become aware of different ways of thinking, political thinking, and that sort of thing. I was maybe 16 or 18 when this began to happen, and so in a way, for me, I always responded to the poetry. And I think with Rocha's pictures, that's what I'm saying. I went in, I responded to the poetry of the film. The politics were there. That's why I say it's beyond the politics, because the poetry is so strong that it's eternal. It's about mankind. It's not just about a political system, or against a political system. It goes beyond that. That's why it'll always be fresh and new. And so I think, for me, that if the two can't exist together, the way he says politics and poetry can't exist together, the poetry has the politics. No matter what you do, it's political. And I think this is something that, again, the younger people of today could maybe benefit from seeing in these films. I mean, it's obvious in Terror and Transit because it's about politics, in a way. But it's different about politics than the way, say, All the King's Men is. The Robert Penn Warren novel that was made into a film. And this new film a new version coming out on that. It's a different thing. And the thing about Terror and Transit, I mean, is when I saw that at the Museum of Modern Art, I never saw a reaction to a film that way. There was the last shot of the man firing the gun. It's widescreen, 185, and he's on the corner of the frame, I remember. And after the film was over, there were 2 or 3 people just applauding and applauding and applauding for like 20 minutes. It was moving. It was so overwhelming. I mean, not that, I don't say this where I say pick up a gun and go and shoot, but it has to do with that image is like the most eloquent image of, in cinema, that expresses that injustice will always be resisted. Always. One way or the other. It's just going to happen. Because he stays on the screen and you hear those gunshots. And this image is incendiary. And I saw the reaction in the audience. It was powerful. And so that's poetry, but you can also say it's politics. But the poetry is first. So maybe he's right. I got Glauber Rocha I met over the years, then I started making films. There's no doubt Antonio das Mortas had like a major impact on Mean Streets and on Raging Bull. On Raging Bull we put in some Brazilian music in homage to Glauber. There's a couple of pieces of music in there. But in any event, I think last time I saw him was in Venice, 1980, I think. Yeah. But before that, we had Tom Luddy brought him over to I had a small house in Los Angeles, and we had a dinner as Tom Luddy, myself, and Glauber, and I showed him The Big Shave, his short I had made. And we looked at a John Ford film, The Horse Soldiers. Yeah. The Horse Soldiers. Not a great John Ford film, but it had, he liked Ford, and he liked Westerns, he told me.
Era uma espécie assim de cruzar João Ford com Jean Vigo e com Eisenstein.
I think it's Antonio. I think. But I go back and forth. There's Land and Anguish and Barlavento. But I like very much. Antonio's the one I keep checking back with. I keep showing to people if I think they deserve it. Because sometimes some people are gone. I mean, some people like zombies. And no more feeling or something. I don't know. And I think it's good to show it to people who will, that it might help them in their work. Or even if they reject it, it's something for them to have a reaction to, rather than what's being presented today. But no, I think it's Antonio. I go back and forth with Antonio. The music is always in my head, and I know it very well. It's fresh. It's new. It doesn't cater to tastes of the box office, or I mean the box office in a bad way, of a traditional, okay, now we're going to sit you down and tell you a nice story. This punches you in the face, you see, and wakes you up. It opens your eyes. And that's what you need today, more than ever.